I encode a lot of test files, and while I try to include the relevant parameters in the file name, there are parameters that I can't include in the file name that are often relevant to the examination. For example, how many threads did I use? What was the GOP size? Are they uniform? So I find myself using MediaInfo in this view, which is HTML view, to go back and kind of recreate what I did from an encoding perspective. So this is the very fast encode. This is a very slow encode, and you can see the difference in reference frames here and here. If you look down further, you can see B frames here are 3, here is 8. So that gives me a pretty good idea, but it's time consuming, and while it's possible with X.264, it's impossible with X.265 because there's about 150 parameters instead of the 30 or 40 you see here. What you can do in Bitrate Explorer is load the same two files in, and we have a file compare view. And in this view, file intelligence, this is basically the MediaInfo analog, except it gives you things like a thumbnail, which is always useful when you're trying to identify the file. And it's going into the file header, it's examining all the parameters we just saw in MediaInfo, and it's telling us, hey, this is the very fast preset, and this is the very slow preset. So pretty convenient way to understand which preset you use, but that's in the file name, so that's not a big revelation in this case. But if I click File Compare, then what this does is compare the encoding parameters for both files, and if I click Show Deltas Only, it shows me what the differences are. So we see very fast versus very slow. We see that 3 B frames, 8 B frames, these are characteristics of the preset, not different encoding parameters that I inserted. But we see that a lot of the encoding parameters that I care about, like GOP size, those are the equivalent. Iframes at scene changes, yes. And we can go through the file, make sure that they are encoded similarly without going through the side-by-side analysis you have to do in MediaInfo. Now, this is optimal with X.264 and X.265 encoded with FFmpeg because of all the file parameters that are included in the file header that we saw in MediaInfo. So you're not going to get the same comparative data with AV1 or VP9, but you will get a lot of, none of this, but you will get a lot of the information that's populated here. So File Compare is a feature that stays with the product after the trial period expires, so it's something that's permanent in the product. I find it useful, and I hope you will too.